Morning everyone, so time for another video as part of the Y series where I'm just going to cover the absolute basics. There might be a little bit of configuration in some of the videos, but it's going to be kept to a minimum. The purpose of it is just to explain why you would select certain technologies and why they would be useful. So what we're going to be covering in this video is VPN. So it's changed over the years. You used to have PPP, TP, SSL VPN, ZTNA is sort of emerging now as a potential replacement, and IPSEC VPN. So the first one to cover off is SSL VPN. So simply put, that is where you have a remote user and they could be on a laptop or a physical appliance, doesn't matter. They're usually remote working, and they connect up to the FortiGate using SSL. Now there's two ways of doing this. They can open up a web browser and bring up a web interface where you can assign like buttons, map file shares, but everything that they do that gets tunneled back to the organization needs to be done and conducted inside that web browser. Okay, so I just thought I'd show you what the web interface looks like. So I've browsed to the WAN interface of my FortiGate 60E. I've configured a specific SSL VPN port, which is 10443. I've created a local user on the gate. I'm just going to put the username and password in for that. As you can see, this is what the interface looks like. So I'm connected. I can do everything from inside this browser. I could RDP to my sim racing machine. I could connect to a file share, or I could SSH to my Cisco switch. So that's how you do the web interface method. One big call out here is that certainly if you're doing things like RDP and SSH, when it does the conversion from RDP to HTML5, it can be quite intensive on memory. And for some of the larger platforms that I've managed in the past, having sort of 500 web-based users all doing the HTML5 conversion basically destroyed the device and ran the memory into the ground. So just be mindful of that. The second method is FortiClient. So that's a bit of VPN software that you install on each machine, which I'll show you now. So this is just the FortiClient VPN software that can be installed on Windows, Mac, and Linux. It can also be installed on Android and iOS devices. You just simply configure the VPN to the WAN interface of the gate and use the username and password and connect. The difference with this is that once you're connected, you can just minimize the agent, and you're essentially extending that remote machine to be inside the network. So you'd be able to connect to whatever you've defined by policy. So SSH, RDP, connecting to SMB file shares, that kind of thing. But it doesn't have to be conducted from the web browser like the previous method. So something that's relatively new, and it's not something that I've done massively. I've seen it when doing some consultancy for various different clients, is you can actually, if you've got two FortiGates, you can actually have an SSL VPN server. So that's where the client is connecting to, just like with the web-based browser or the FortiClient software, but if you actually have a second FortiGate, that gate can run as a client itself within FortiOS, and then it can then connect to the server. So it's an alternative to IPSEC. So I just thought it's worth calling out because it is starting to get more popular. Okay, so as an alternative to SSL VPN, a technology or a terminology known as zero trust network access is starting to emerge. There is a video specifically about how to configure it for a HTTP reverse proxy already on the channel, so I'll make that pop up in the top right hand corner for you to view. But the principles of this are you might have a remote worker, let's say that they're in Starbucks. They would simply browse to a public IP address. I call it a published application to my client. So in this case, that would be on 1.1.1.1:2443. You specify the port within the ZTNA configuration. That then does some magic, and it works kind of like a VIP, where it will then proxy that request through to the internal web server, which I've got on 10.90.90.443, and the user would then connect to that application via the public internet. I don't want to cause any confusion or anything like that. ZTNA can be used internally as well, so don't think it's just for remote workers, because it's not. But there's all sorts of other jiggery pokery, let's say, that goes on here, in that the posture of the client itself. So this has FortiClient installed. That's a must, and it's able to look at the profile of the device. So does it have ADVPN installed? Is the disk encrypted? What OS is running? And is there any known threats? So the basic and the logic behind this is that you can define this with something known as ZTNA tags. But once the connection is established to the internal web server via 1.1.1.2443, if the pointer changes to something that would be out of what you've conformed, so I don't know, maybe is there a known threat? That was no on connection, but suddenly the user's downloaded something and done something naughty. The state changes, then instantly the connection is terminated. I don't want to go into ZTNA too much on this video. It's a very, very basic video, but there is a ZTNA video specifically on the channel, and I do plan on developing more content around ZTNA in the very near future, so please check that out. Okay, so the final common method is known as IPSEC. It's at the network layer in the OSI model. That's a good one for interview questions. It's an open standard, so it doesn't just work with FortiNet or FortiGate. It works with pretty much any major firewall or router: Palo, Checkpoint, Draytech, Mikrotik, Cisco. You could do from one vendor to another as well. So from FortiGate to Palo, or from FortiGate to Draytech. It's an open standard. It's known as a site-to-site VPN. And if you look at the topologies here, I've got a couple to demonstrate. So FortiGate Site A, we'll put this in Manchester. To FortiGate Site B, put this in London. You create an IPSEC tunnel between the two appliances. You can specify the subnets within inside the phase 2, or you can simply leave the a default, so 0.0.0/0, and let firewall policies do it. But for all intents and purposes, you're bridging the two networks together. So once you've got your phase 1 and your phase 2 established, then 192.168.1.0/24, any host inside that network would be able to, in theory, be able to communicate with 192.168.2.0/24. Obviously, firewall policies aside, make sure that you're granular with those. But that's what a site-to-site VPN is. Again, vendor agnostic, works. It's an open standard, works from FortiGate to Cisco to any vendor, and it's been used for a very, very long time. Potentially, just be careful about how granular you are with the networks on each side. It's very common for hackers to get in the Manchester site and then jump to London because people haven't been that granular, or at least be granular with your sources and your destinations. So, do your users even need to be able to communicate across the VPN is something that I quite often say in consultancy, or is it like a VM replication and nothing else? So if it is, then lock it down at an application layer, or certainly a source and destination. So those are a few key call outs, but site-to-site VPN isn't going to go away. It's very common. Okay, so finally, still on IPSEC, but a different method. Let's say ADVPN. There's videos on the channel about this, but in its basic form, you have a hub or hubs, dual hubs. Don't do single hub deployments. But the method is a dial-up IPSEC VPN. So there is an IPSEC VPN server running on the two hubs, the two head ends, let's call them, and then you have spokes. But what's different is that on the previous method, there's a permanent tunnel established between the Manchester and London office. They would connect on the public IP addresses. Same kind of terminology here, but the spokes initiate the session. So the spokes, just like SSL VPN, say, hello, I want to connect, and they will then establish an IPSEC VPN to the master. The reason for this is that because the spoke always initiates the connection, it doesn't require a static public IP address. Because it's initiating it, the IP address can change and it only dials in when it's required. The ADVPN aspect of it is the ability to form shortcuts between the two appliances or the spokes. So if there was let's say that this was Sheffield and this is Crewe, and Sheffield for some reason wanted to start having a conversation with Crewe, then the initial first packet would go up via, let's use this as Manchester up here, still the hub. Just clear on that, that's a hub. There's a routing protocol involved in this, so there's internal BGP and BGP route reflection. Not going to cover that in this video. But let's say, Sheffield wants to speak to Crewe, so the first packet would go up via the Manchester hub and then down towards Crewe. And then after a few packets or so, using IKE, so Internet Key Exchange, I believe it's known as, Sheffield forms a temporary IPSEC VPN with crew directly, and then after a prolonged period of time, I think by default it's 6 hours on the gates, there's no traffic between the two, then the session gets torn down. But I just thought I'd cover dial-up IPSEC VPN as well. So that wraps this video up. There's loads of information on docs.fortinet.com. Go into the FortiGate section. 7.4.1 is the latest. Don't deploy production appliances on 7.4 at the minute, but the documentation around IPSEC and SSL is available for you to consume. So just to summarize, SSL VPN, known as more commonly deployed for remote workers. So you've got somebody that's in a coffee shop and they want to connect to some internal resources that are perhaps behind a data center or that kind of thing. Can be done in two ways. Can be done via a web browser, where there's a bit of conversion into HTML5, so they can do things like RDP, that kind of thing, all from the web browser itself. Second method, more common method, scales better. Use a VPN client agent, FortiClient in Fortinet's case. Can be connected pre login as well, so it can be completely transparent to users. But essentially creates a tunnel connection to the assets that the user wants to consume, and then they're able to connect to like file shares, that kind of thing, without too much knowledge from the user in terms of what's going on. Third method that I shared is ZTNA. So starting to emerge. Marketing suggests it's potentially a replacement for SSL VPN. The way that I describe ZTNA, and again, check out the videos that are on the channel, is it's a more seamless interaction for users, transparent, let's say. It's more secure. It has an understanding of the posture of the device, i.e. is EPP, EDR, antivirus installed on the agent, the host, I should say. And it's not like SSL VPN in terms of once a session's established, it's completely dumb to what's going on around the appliance. If the posture of the appliance changes, the user downloads malware, that kind of thing, something detonates on the host, then it will immediately terminate the session. One thing with ZTNA to be mindful of is it's at this moment in time, it's TCP based only. So applications, a customer of mine that you ran Citrix, where it constantly switches between TCP and UDP. It didn't work with ZTNA, so that's ZTNA. And then next is IPSEC. So you've got your traditional site-to-site VPN, where you're essentially bridging the networks together between two appliances. It can be FortiGate to FortiGate or FortiGate to Cisco Firepower, and the resources between the two sites will be able to communicate with each other depending on what you've defined within the VPN or security policy configuration. And then the third method that I've briefly touched on, again, there's more videos about ADVPN specifically, is IPSEC VPN, where the spokes are dialing up to the hub on demand. They also have the ability for spoke-to-spoke communication, direct IPSEC VPNs forming natively between the spokes. That's your auto discovery VPN. Starting to emerge is a Fortinet proprietary technology, ADVPN, but some of the other vendors have been doing similar, like Cisco DM VPN, for example. So that's the VPN, different types of VPN consumed all in one quite long video now. You can use IPSEC VPN on hosts as well, similar to SSL VPN. I didn't cover that. it's quite popular with some of the other vendors. This is a Fortinet-based channel, so I thought that would stick with SSL VPN, but just thought I would cover that. As always, thanks for your support. Please let me know in the comments what videos you would like to see. Hit that like button and hit that subscriber button. I'm trying to get 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you can help me get there, that would be greatly appreciated. See you in the next video.